The conversation continues with the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Labour, Geoffrey Kaituko, and we've started off talking about the plans, the implementations that the ministry has in place when it comes to labour outside. It will be interesting to look at some of those policies for what is happening inside the country for Kenyans who remain here. Before we get on to that, I want to talk to you a little bit about running. The Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon comes in on the 29th of October. It's the 20th edition of it. It's a special one because it's been happening for 20 years. And this time, they're saying register now, www.nairobimarathon.com. Why is it so special? Because you're not just running for your health or running to keep moving, but you're also running and contributing towards the Future Makers program. It's a program where it ensures that young people, kind of the ones that we're talking about today, that young people have an opportunity, especially girls and those with disability, to learn, earn and grow. It's Kenya's biggest single-day athletics event. It takes place on the 29th of October. Register today with 2,000 shillings and get ready to run on the 29th. CT had a proverb for us at the beginning of the hour, and here we are again at another hour. Let's remind ourselves of what that is.
Yes, it's actually the same proverb. The proverb hasn't changed with the hour.
No.
Same proverb. At harvest, you know how good the millet is. Yes. Only at harvest. Before then, you can only hazard a guess.
Indeed.
But when you harvest, then you're clear about what it is that you've harvested.
Indeed, some of the things at the ministry, hopefully that the results we'll see will be good ones, and it will not be a kernel of or three on a whole ear of millet, but maybe more, isn't it? So,
yes. I think I feel he's the right man to engage him on two acts that have been bothering me, that have been abused over the years by the Reba community in the country. One of them is the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 2007. And the other one is the Work Injury Benefit Act. One, the Occupational Safety Health Act has not covered extensively on the, the mental health that people are being put under in their working spaces. It has never explicitly talked about mental health. Mental health is turning to be one of the health hazard in the working spaces that is here to be addressed. The other one is the what we call the Work Injury Act. That if you go to litigations today at the courts, there are thousands and thousands of litigations that never comes to conclusion, that are based on injuries that have happened in workplaces, and employers, including government, have not honored so many rulings in court in favor of those people who have been injured in the working space. And because those are some of the things that are affecting our workers both here and out there. What are we doing to ensure that, one, we address the mental health? I'll tell you, if your daughter goes to, Lebanon, and she cannot be traced, you have a double tragedy of her suffering there and mental health that engulfs the parents here. So what are we doing to address those issues? Because they are turning out to be some of the things. I recently was involved in tracing and returning back a young girl from my village. But when she came, we had to commit her into a mental institution because of what she has gone through. It has also affected the parents. These are things that needs to be addressed, and what the minister is doing about them.
Yes, I'm glad you brought up the issue of occupational safety and health, and also Workers' Injury Benefits Act. As I mentioned, these are laws that were made in 2007, and they are now up for review. In the month of April, we visited our sister nation of Tanzania, because we have had problems with the implementation of Occupational Safety, Health and Workers' Injury Benefits Act. It is true what you're saying. Even the court has found it hard to implement WIBA. It's becoming untenable. And this is a conversation that we have to confront.
Yes.
But we need the support of employers in that area of occupational safety and health. In Tanzania, what has happened is that they have modernized their law. They have what is called occupational safety, OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Authority. It's an authority. And then there is a workers' compensation fund, which is contributory in nature. It's voluntary, such that employers take care of these things upfront. They don't need to only come in when somebody is injured or when they die. The current system that we have in Kenya is adversarial. And the employers are non-cooperative because they are asked to pay for this, for that. So many will want to run away. And this is the problem we have, and that is why these matters are clogging our court system. We think the system, the one that we have in Tanzania, which is a social insurance kind of system, is better. You have the workers' compensation fund, you make a contribution. Should anything happen to an employee, then the fund takes care of
it. Yeah.
Okay? And many employers in Tanzania have embraced it. They say, in fact, it saves them a lot of problems. Instead of being stuck in court for a long time with their workers who either get injured or die, this authority and fund are able to assist the workers, are able to compensate the workers and adequately. So then, meaning that we have to urgently overhaul the 207 Act, the WIBA Act and the OSHA Act. And our proposal is that we have it as one act and then provide for the authority and also for the fund in a form of a social insurance.
The thing that I wonder is, are we then saying if we say we're going to overhaul both the WIBA and the OSHA structures we currently have them, are we saying that what we currently have isn't working at all? Because to overhaul means you are doing away with everything and doing everything that is new. I ask because when you talk about insurance for injuries of workers, many companies take out insurance. The workers are insured against these very things. Now, where then will the insurance industry come in?
You know what would surprise you, and I find it very outrageous?
Yes.
It's even the Industrial Court Act. This is the court that is supposed to adjudicate the matters of workers. It is older than the new constitution. It is an act of 2011, the Industrial Court Act, that sets up the court that deals with the matter. Even the court itself is not in line with our constitution. How then are we able to adjudicate matters and the freedoms that we gave ourselves in 2010 if the court that is supposed to adjudicate the act that establishes this industrial court is for 2011, and it was not really actually fully conversant with the new constitution, because you remember the process of building it was started before the crime of the new constitution. So I think it is a challenge on you as a ministry to streamline this, because these things are happening because there is a vacuum that needs to be adjudicated on.
You see why I asked this question?
Yes.
Consider, we have a health insurance which we sometimes say is not a health insurance, but we call it NHIF, okay? But it is a health insurance. That's what it really is. It serves that purpose. Okay?
Yes, yes.
We've seen it work.
Yes.
I have seen it work.
Yes.
It has encountered some headwinds currently,
Yes.
but it doesn't mean it cannot work.
Yes.
So my question is, I'm leaving the argument of the private insurance companies and the schemes aside.
Yes.
Are we saying that this migrant welfare fund, just for instance, is going to work in the same way that something like NHIF works?
We hope not. Having learned from that example.
The example of NHIF is when it worked and how it worked. You see, I'm saying this because not everybody can afford private insurance.
That's correct.
And they still need a safety net. So the issue of a fund that is tied in to some form of insurance in my mind, makes sense. If only academically, it makes sense.
So how does it work, PS,
Yes.
is the question here.
The fund.
Yes.
The fund will be administered by a board, the one that we are talking about, and that it is expected that it's going to provide relief assistance, legal assistance, and also psychosocial support, what you just talked about, to our migrant workers. That is not currently available. Repatriation of migrant workers in distress, among other things. So this fund it was proposed by our diaspora community. They said that you need to come up with something which is a safety net to support us when we get into trouble or when we face difficulties. And so this is a proposal we have made, and we are asking Kenyans to support. It's purely going to be a contributory fund.
Voluntary?
Voluntary, yes.
But voluntary. It's been proposed by those in the diaspora, and it's voluntary. Have we worked out the details of how exactly it's supposed to work? Or is this a work in progress?
Since it's a bill, it's a proposal.
Yes.
And so it will continue changing, depending with how Kenyans engage with Parliament and also with the ministry. There are a number of proposals which they're making, but of course we borrowed from an example in Bangladesh and an example in the Philippines, countries that have this kind of fund which supports their migrant workers overseas and also when they come back.
Okay. Now, we talk about diaspora remittances. It's the number one foreign exchange earner for the country today. $500 billion dollars is what we looked at, over the last, year. There's a contentious issue that those who are remitting this money to Kenya then will be taxed. And the question is, why and how exactly then is this supposed to play out?
The taxing of
the taxes on remittances.
Okay. Well, the general principle in the new constitution is that we all get taxed. That's just the general principle that we all get taxed as Kenyan citizens.
This principle, where exactly in the constitution would I read it?
If I had a copy of the constitution, I could take you. Yes, I'll be happy to look at it.
Yeah. So essentially what we're saying is that there's no running away from taxes. It doesn't matter where you are. These individuals who work on the other side of the pond taxed where they are. And they're sending this money home for upliftment, for development, etc., etc. But then the contentious issue is that they will then have to be subjected to tax on the money that they sent home for this development. And the rationale for that is what is being questioned. Yeah.
I think the way I understand it is that the remittances are very important to us as a country. The taxing of remittances, the way it's being proposed and the discussion that is going on, I think was mooted to see to it that there is what remains with the government. Because currently you send your remittances, they go to your family.
Yes.
And then they're taken with, some of it is probably you pay a fee to the service provider who is facilitating you from wherever you are. So I think that proposal will best be answered by Treasury because the proposal comes from there, not Labour. Labour, what we have proposed is the Migrant Workers Welfare Fund.
Yes. Which too has been met by some contention. And why is that?
Because people think it is a tax again.
Is it not?
Not really. It is voluntary. You choose to contribute or not. Yeah, if you have your own arrangement with an insurer, that is okay.
And what is this fund meant to do for migrant workers?
It's meant to be a safety net. I say to provide assistance, whether it is legal, medical, psychosocial support, any kind of support that they need, which is currently missing in in our dealings with our diaspora. There is not really proper and organized manner in which we respond to their issues. So we think this is a better way of addressing their concerns. So
I think the first positive step in that direction was to create a State Department that deals with the diaspora. Because it cannot then be said that they are left to the vagaries of some other department that has its own mandate. But also, if you look at the manner in which in this country we pamper and treat investors, what the diaspora seems to do is even more than just being simple investors. Because investors may come and may leave. But if you talk about the diaspora exists because this is their country. So everything that they do is not only nestled, but is nestled permanently within the country. So a discussion and an argument about what it is that should be done or what it is that they would like to see done in order to make their lives better is something that must be treated with not just a great deal of attention, but must be managed with the speed that it actually deserves.
Bona P.S., even as we look at some of these things, I mean, we look at extensively unemployment matters and looking at the creation of, 1 million positions for Kenyans outside of Kenya. The issues within Kenya still continue to be, and one is looking at then what is the ministry involved in that is going to significantly reduce the percentages of unemployment that we are seeing in the country today. Because even as those who go out for those jobs leave and start to work, there's still a huge number of those who are left in the country who are still looking for gainful employment, who are looking for something to do with the expertise that they've been able to garner in school. So what plans does the ministry have? What plans does the ministry connected to a one government approach have to make sure that we are seeing a reduction in those numbers?
I beg your pardon on the last part of your question.
What is the ministry doing in that one government approach to ensure that the numbers of unemployed that we're seeing who remain in the country, who are not part of the 1 million ambitious plan to see jobs outside of Kenya, who remain in Kenya? The unemployment issue is still a big one. Look at the pictures that we saw, for example, the recruitment of KDF. 350 slots were met by thousands of people at the Embakasi garrison. And we have many, many examples of that when there have been calls for applications. It's a burden and it's a big one. It must sit heavy on your shoulders. We're asking, what is the way forward?
Yes, the way forward is for this economy to work. Agriculture, manufacturing, construction. We have to get those sectors working because they will absorb many Kenyans. And then also we are organizing that space so that now we have a website, for example. The private sector, when they advertise, we have requested them to post their adverts in the NEA, National Employment website, because National Employment Authority is a special purpose vehicle that was created by an act of parliament to promote employment for Kenyans. I know many Kenyans are not aware of that. So the NEA has a website, and the employers are expected to post jobs there. Then those Kenyans who are seeking for employment opportunities are supposed to register as job seekers. And then also private recruitment agencies that are licensed are also found there. If you go to the NEA website, you'll see all that. However, what has been lacking is awareness among Kenyans that there's this resource which is available to them for those who are looking for jobs, for companies that want to post vacancies, and also you have these private recruitment agencies that are licensed being listed. So we want to encourage Kenyans to use that resource. The NEA, it's called NEAMIS, because I know many young people are tech savvy. That way they'll be able to access opportunities which are available here. But for us as an economy, we have to ensure that we expand it. And I think this is at the center of the Kenya Kwanza administration better agenda. Bring back this economy to where it will work for every Kenyan.
But appears
yes,
you are right.
Yes.
the Constitution does empower the government to do exactly what you said. It's actually in Article 209. And if you look at the Finance Act, Part 3, it says clearly. In fact, it's a nice, lengthy thing. You can't even miss it. Even if you want to miss it, you can't miss it. It states exactly what the powers that is given to the government and how, well, it's almost limitless, really. There's no cap on the powers that are actually given to the government. So you were spot on.
Thank you very much.
It is
I actually had found it.
Yes.
So you're very right. And I'm glad you carry your constitution with you.
Oh, I do.
Very resourceful man.
Many people stopped reading.
No, I do.
Yes.
I do.
It's a very good document to
Sure.
learn and understand it.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's important for our domestic economy really to work. And this is really something that we all must do, so that now we in Kenya here can deal with normal labor issues because people have jobs.
Right.
It is the economy that creates jobs. One of the things I ask KNBS to do, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, is to do what the American Department of Labor does. Get us the data. How many jobs has the economy created in the last 1 month? You know, the US, the oil, Dole Department of Labor, what it does most of the times, they publish numbers. The economy expanded by 100,000 jobs. The economy contracted by 50,000 jobs. So that way you know you're creating jobs locally or you are losing jobs. Yes. But also the other thing I wanted to speak to are the PPO jobs, the tech jobs, remote jobs in particular.
Yes.
Because there are many Kenyans now who are working in that space. We are partnering with the Ministry of ICT and Digital Economy and ILO to ensure that there are protections that those Kenyans need. There is a bit of organizing also to do there because there have been situations of exploitation. An employer is overseas, you're doing their work here in Kenya, and then they don't pay you properly. So this gig economy is important to us because of our young people who are tech savvy, who are working for different companies. So that is another frontier for people who are looking for jobs and who have the necessary skills.
We've looked at quite a number of factors, Bwana PS. We've looked at, international work. We've looked at labor laws, looked at unemployment and asked ourselves, so what's going to happen? And it's clear from what you've said that, look, if we don't get the economy moving, it'll be difficult to create the jobs. And there's certain things that need to happen. All right. But if we look at another side of labor in this country, a huge aspect of that being domestic work. And it has always been a contentious issue. Over time, I don't know that the laws have changed much, but in terms of who you hire in your home and how you work and what protections you provide them, what are the mechanisms for operation that are in place when it does come to domestic work, when it comes to minimum wage, when it comes to protections for people who work at that level? It's a big issue. It has always been. And how is that being sorted out today?
Great. That's an important question. As you know, Kenya is yet to ratify 2 very important conventions. We are in the process of moving the ratification process forward, and the conventions here are C-189, ILO Convention on Domestic Workers, and C-190 on elimination of violence and harassment from the place of work. What I would say is that we haven't been very successful because we do not gotten a lot of cooperation from the employers here at home. There's a bit of pushback when it comes to domestic workers. We have support from KOTU, but employers in their different forms don't want to have that discussion. But it is an important discussion because our domestic, we cannot be talking of mistreatment of Kenyans elsewhere, yet here at home we close our eyes to the situation. Even here in Nairobi, for example, domestic workers are underpaid. The minimum wage is for Nairobi is 15,000. For example, you will find many domestic workers in a month will not earn that they might probably get 7,000, 6,000. So
that's the reality, isn't it?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Even the amount he's mentioning is a great deal of money, and it's far removed from the reality, because this person who earns 15,000 also tends to have a domestic worker. So what do you think they are going to pay their domestic worker?
And this is not a suggestion, but appears this is not a suggestion. Oh,
Yes.
it's okay if you would pay 15,000 as a minimum. You're saying so long as there is a domestic worker in your home who is carrying out these duties, the minimum according to the law, it's a law. It's a law.
Yes.
Yes.
According to the law, you must pay them 15,000 shillings. Okay. What appears it's not happening.
Very true. We need the cooperation of employers there, our employers in particular. But also we need to strengthen our enforcement mechanism, because in a situation like this, a labor officer or a labor inspector is supposed to assist that domestic worker or any worker who is facing exploitation at the place of work.
Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Is that what we're saying? That if you're not paying domestic workers 15,000 shillings, essentially, they're facing issues of exploitation. And it's a contravention of the law.
Yes, it is, because that's the minimum wage.
Buena Pierce.
Yes.
This is a discussion we need to have honestly.
Yes. What do you think, City?
Well, I'm asking the question, why do you think, we're all laughing here because we all know that most people who have domestic workers will not pay them that 15,000. There are people who pay the 15,000. What is it about the way we view domestic workers and the way and what we assume their role to be, and how it is we relate this to what we think we should pay them? Because it isn't ability. Ability is not the problem. It is an issue at some point, given what you earn, but it is our whole perception of this cadre of worker. We all understand and we even verbalize what we consider to be the important role they play, especially for people who have young children. Okay? But we do not apply a commensurate reward system for the importance that we place on what we say, or on the importance of the role that these domestic workers have. So what is it about us as Kenyans and this particular role, and why is it that we will always find excuses for not paying what we know we should pay? And yet, in the places we work in, we're very adamant about what we consider to be our rights and what we should be paid. What is it about us? Because that's a question I'm asking.
Yes, it's, we view domestic work casually. Most of the people engage them the way we engage casual workers. They have no contract, and then they have no benefits. It is considered to be something that someone comes to do, the work that is done today. They go, maybe 2, 3, like Mama Fua. She will come 2 or 3 days to wash for you, probably to cook. So they continue being perpetually casual workers. And in a proper context, we need to contract our domestic workers, give them their entitlement in the contract, have a proper arrangement between an employer and an employee. But this conversation can only come up, labor is a tripartite space.
Right.
There is government, there is COTU, Federation of Workers, and then there is FKE, and others like KEPSA. Those represent employers. Until we all accept that we need to improve the situation of our domestic workers, and that an employer, we need also to define, this is something CT, I think, we need to define an employer. Who is an employer? Even in that domestic situation. Are you an employer? Many people don't think they are employers.
I am an employer, yes.
For the domestic worker, you are, isn't it?
It's not just domestic worker. I'm actually an employer of more than a domestic worker.
I know you employ more than. In this case, we are discussing about the domestic worker.
There's a reason
for example.
There's a reason why I'm diverting it.
Yes.
I am saying I'm diverting it because there are nuances to domestic work.
Yeah.
And this is what I was hoping we'd say. Many domestic workers live in the houses of the people they work for. Okay? So they argue that housing has been provided for them. Right? food has been provided for them. How this is provided and the quality that's provided is a completely different discussion. But this is the argument that they have. So it takes me back to what you've just said. Definition.
Yes.
So, employer. I'm in the category of people who have somebody who comes maybe twice a week. Yes, I'm in that category.
Do you consider yourself an employer under that circumstance?
Yes, I am.
Now, have you given them a contract, for example?
To come, yes, I have a verbal one.
Oh, what are we saying, PS? Are we looking at a situation whereby the ministries is there an insistence? Is there an insistence? Is there an insistence by the ministry to say that if you are going to have somebody who is working in your home 5 days at least per week, and that you have them paid a monthly salary, that you must have a written contract with this individual about the work that they will be doing, job description, and then about what the remuneration is going to be?
Of course. Of course. But, we also, I want to concede one thing, that the way we perceive domestic workers, we do not strictly think they are workers.
No.
And in that situation, you don't consider yourself to be an employer per se.
Exactly.
And so this is what we need to redefine. And I thought if Kenya ratifies this convention finally, then we'll be forced to adopt international standards in dealing with domestic workers. As provided for in C-189. Yes.
So the reason why it cannot be professionalized at that level, the reason why it cannot be professionalized at that level is because the overarching principle which Kenya would then lend to in terms of participation actually doesn't exist. Well, as of now, until there's a ratification of the same, it doesn't exist. So are we saying because that doesn't exist, you cannot then implement it at the local level? Because of that, because what standards then are you applying when you say this? But we still do see that if today somebody who was an employee of someone and they were not getting their minimum wage 15,000, if they bring themselves to the Ministry of Labour, for example, very often we do see then proceedings thereafter that then compel the former employer to make this payment over years. In lieu of reinstatement, for example. But are we saying that the ministry is streamlining these things and saying that this is the way it ought to be without that overarching principle that is going to be followed? How then do you do the two? Because this is an everyday issue. It's an everyday affair. Every day there's somebody who's asking the question, and they still come to the Ministry of Labour. Every time Labour officer is asking this, the other thing. How is it being streamlined without a guiding law?
Well, generally, what is happening is that when we receive complaints from domestic workers or any other category of workers, we assign labor inspectors to do that work. Those are trained labor officers. And therefore, they will look out for the employer and engage the employer, engage this other person. And then we mediate. Largely, our role there is mediation. That's what is currently happening. I would say the enforcement mechanism is weak, arising from the fact that we do not have enough officers to do this work. Number two is that labor offenses, which we used to prosecute, are no longer done by the ministry. DPP took away all powers to prosecute across different institutions in government. And so when DPP did that, when you take up a labor offense, when you do it, when you decide to take it to DPP, they don't consider it to be a serious offense, like murder, like rape. Yet to us, the Minister of Labour, this is a weighty matter. So we have since written to the new DPP. We have because in law we still have the minister still has the powers to appoint labor prosecutors to carry out prosecution of offenses that are connected to employment and the places of work. Yes.
You see, if we are going to streamline it, as you say, and we're going to get granular and particular about the demands, the requirements, and so forth, then one shouldn't forget casual workers who work in the industries. because they are also an exploited lot.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Please go ahead, Peter.
In fact,
Yes.
leave alone industries. One of the people or the institutions that are insulting, because it's not just exploiting, it is exploiting and insulting workers are county governments.
And
The
private-
47
private
county
firms.
government, I can tell you, and this is factual to the letter, at least every county in Kenya has over 1,000 casual workers that are not paid in time, that are not, I mean, at what point do you have a casual worker in a county getting annual renewals for 5 years without getting a permanent position? It is an institutional abuse of the law that if you work for a certain period for government or a certain institution, they should be able to engage you fully, because why are you a casual worker for 5 years in a county government? That is the case currently. I'll give an example in where I come in Kiambu. We have over 2,000 workers that in the last 1 year have been fired, as in their contract expires, nobody is renewing them, but new people and new faces continues to join government on the same things. You will find there are governors today who have direct positions provided for by SRC, but they choose to employ senior government officials on casual labor. I'll tell you, Bwana PS, a chief officer in a county is a reciprocal of a PS in national government. It's the same, actually the same position in the county, but the roles are the same. There are counties, and again, I will always start with an example from home.
What do you know?
From August last year, PS, all the chief officers in Kiambu County are being employed on monthly basis. Chief officer.
Monthly?
Yes, monthly contract. This is the person who should have the authority to incur expenditure in a ministry. He's the person who needs to actually actualize policies in government. He has been given a contract of 1 month. The governor has never advertises new constitution, advertises for this position, never hires.
Okay, Mushendu, so what's your question? What's your question?
So the question is that when we are talking about people abusing offices, the biggest abuser is not even the private sector currently. The biggest abuser is the 47 levels of government. What is the Ministry of Labor doing to, first of all, streamline county governments? Because county governments are government institutions which must lead by example in terms of exercising labor laws to the letter.
Yes, very important discussion. I like this. We should have had even 4 hours. Because this is a very crucial subject matter. Let me speak to the issue of labor standards in terms and devolution. In terms of our constitution, labor standards, it was not devolved to the county governments.
Yes.
It under the 4th schedule of this constitution. I just wanted to make sure that my reading of it is correct. However, the failure in this case, what our role there as labor ministry is to advise. In the spirit of cooperation and consultation, is to advise the county government. But the people who have a mandate of dealing with the county executive is the county assembly. I'll say that as a former speaker.
Yes.
And during my time, I had a very active labor committee. There's a labor committee in every county assembly. It is that committee that should be asking the county secretary and the county executive and the county public service board, how is it that we will have chief officers on 1 month contract?
Yes.
Okay. There's a procedure in the County Governments Act that has been clearly outlined on how chief officers are supposed to be recruited. Those are statutory offices.
Yes.
So the County Assembly of Kiambu, in my view, is the one failing. However, there's a general problem with counties when it comes to how they treat their workers. I want to concede that we are currently dealing with the issue of healthcare workers, doctors, clinical officers. We are in mediation with the Ministry of Health here at the national level, Council of Governors, And of course, Ministry of Labor is the one that brings them together. The Ministry of Health nationally has aligned itself. But we are not getting much support from COG in that particular, in the issue of medical, the doctors, the clinical officers. Recently, I went for the AGM of clinical officers. And they told me of a situation where in one county, all clinical officers were dismissed one good morning by a governor.
Which is really wrong.
Just because.
Yeah.
And he's not the employment authority.
But now in this situation now, my role there will be to advise the governor that this is not right. These people need to be treated this way. There's the Employment and Labor Relations Court.
Does that county have a board?
It has a board.
But the governor thinks he's the board.
Of course, the situation in many counties, sadly, because of weak oversight structures, is that governors are
cross-cutting,
are ruling supreme.
Yes.
They are not accountable to anybody. Okay. And so my appeal will be to the county assembly, who are elected by the people, to do oversight, to do legislation. Okay.
And you mentioned the Labour and
the Labour Committee, even here in Nairobi County Assembly. Yes, there is a standing committee of Labour in the County Assembly to deal with human resource disputes, issues. And I remember receiving, when I was Speaker, presiding over sessions where reports was being submitted after investigation, inquiry by that committee. Of the County Assembly. So it is the County Assembly, whether of Kisumu, Mombasa, Nairobi, whichever place, Kiambu, that needs to take up that issue. If they seek any support, I'll give them as the PS Labour. I'll send the technical officers to advise that committee, even to advise the county executive to do the right thing.
Right.
Yes.
Let's look at the ministry over the next 4 years and because now here we are now running into implementation. What are the plans as we wind down this conversation this morning? What are the plans over the next 4 years to make sure that a lot of the things that we speak of are streamlined? And what are you hoping as you come out on the end of 4 years that will be seen?
I will say that we have come up with a strategy on global labor migration for 2023 to 2027. I'll share with you for purposes of information after the show. We also have the policy and also the bill now. Once it is enacted, it will be a law. All these are tools that will enable us to coordinate the labor migration sector in a professional manner. But other plans is we want to review the 5 labor laws. We want to modernize them so that they are up to the international standards. A lot of issues, and then we want to ratify the conventions that we are signatory to. For example, C-189 on domestic workers, C-190 on the elimination of violence and harassment. And this is why what you spoke to earlier on, Peter and CT, on the issue of exploitation of workers here, abuse. This is something that we as a society must confront so that we reduce that. During my vetting in Parliament, for example, Honorable Aladwa told me you have to remove officers here in Nairobi. They collude with employers. And so people here get exploited. And so we need to reduce those instances where our officers abet abuse of laborers and workers in this country. So it's just that I don't know whether I'll be in labor for long. That is dependent on the president. But if I'll be here until the end, I think the proverb by C.T. Muga of this morning will now be something that to look back to and say, I was in studio one time and this is what was said and these are the results. So we are hoping for an improved work environment here in the country. We are also looking forward to reduced unemployment during our time in office. We also look forward to affording Kenyans protections, whether they are here at home or in the diaspora.
Indeed, well, one can hope that if you're in labor for long, that we will birth this, results that you're talking about, and it will be a good thing to look at and grow, isn't it?
Yes, certainly.
Indeed. Bon, I just want to thank you for being, you've spirited run for 2 hours and being on the show this morning and talking to us about the plans for the ministry. It would be great to circle back and have a conversation with you over a shop, in the near future and see, okay, these things that you speak of, how far are we, and looking at progress in terms of how the one government approach is working, and then moving forward to see how the unemployment numbers actually go down. So thank you for being here this morning. It's been good to have you.
Thank you too for having me. I look forward to another session with you, maybe in 6 months.
Maybe in 6 months.
Just to review what we've discussed here this morning. By that time, I believe a lot of things will have been put in place.
Yes. Indeed.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.